Friends, there are certain moments in life that catch you off guard. When someone steps into your world and you find yourself wondering why their gaze lingers on you just a bit too long. Why does their mind keep drifting back to you long after the conversation has ended? Why does their heart seem to skip whenever you walk into a room, even when they're trying so hard to mask it with quiet composure or a casual shrug? And then, slowly, the truth starts to surface. This kind of love isn't always the dramatic, obvious type. It doesn't always shout for attention or beg to be noticed. Sometimes it's far more subtle than that. Sometimes it takes root in the silences between conversations. It often starts as simple curiosity, then shifts into admiration, deepens into fascination, and eventually transforms into something much more profound. Something that feels almost impossible to control. Because it wasn't planned. It wasn't calculated. There's a particular kind of attention that feels different when it comes from someone younger. Someone whose heart is still discovering what love even means. Someone who hasn't yet learned how to guard their feelings behind layers of caution. And when a younger person finds themselves falling hopelessly for you, understand this. It's never a coincidence. It's never just superficial attraction or fleeting chemistry. It happens because something within you has stirred something within them that they can't quite put into words. Your presence has unlocked a craving they didn't even realize existed. Your energy has left a mark they can't shake off. This is exactly where psychology steps in to explain what's happening. Carl Jung once pointed out that the human heart doesn't just respond to what it sees on the surface. It responds to what it senses, what it projects onto others, what it's missing, what it still needs to heal. So when a younger person becomes drawn to you, they might not simply be falling for who you are as an individual. They could be falling for the calm you radiate, the depth hidden in your quiet moments, the resilience wrapped inside your gentleness, an emotional richness they've never encountered before. In many ways, they're falling for who they become whenever they're near you. That's precisely why this kind of love can feel so overwhelming, so all-consuming, so hard to let go of. Pay close attention here, because this isn't your typical infatuation. It's not some fleeting crush destined to fizzle out. This is a love that takes shape in the glow of genuine admiration, the kind that begins the moment someone recognizes that you're different from everyone else they've known. You don't chase validation. You don't put on a show. You already know your own value, so you never need permission from anyone else to feel worthy. And that quality, friends, is incredibly magnetic, especially to someone still young, still figuring themselves out, still searching for something solid to hold on to in a world that never stops shifting beneath them. Here's the first thing worth understanding. You offer emotional steadiness, and to a younger heart, that steadiness feels like coming home. Younger people often live inside constant emotional turbulence. One moment they're brimming with confidence, the next they're second-guessing everything. Their moods swing fast, their emotions surge and retreat without warning, leaving them confused more often than not. Then they cross paths with someone like you, someone who isn't easily rattled, who has already survived hardship and chose peace on the other side of it, who doesn't crumble the second life throws a curveball. Suddenly, being near you feels like exhaling after holding your breath for too long. Do you realize just how powerful that is? For a younger soul, peace isn't dull, it's addictive. Stillness isn't emptiness, it's a rare treasure. The world around them has trained them to expect noise, chaos, constant pressure to perform and prove themselves. But you offer something entirely different. You bring groundedness. You carry a quiet self-assurance that doesn't need to be loudly declared. Every word you speak feels intentional. Every time you listen, it feels genuine. When you look at someone, it feels like you're seeing straight through to who they really are, beyond the surface they present to the world. That kind of presence changes something inside a younger person. It lowers their guard. It melts away their resistance. It makes them feel truly seen and understood. And once someone feels emotionally safe around you, their attachment deepens fast, sometimes before they even realize what's happening to them. They end up trusting you before they even trust themselves. They feel a sense of protection before they can even name what they're being protected from. Slowly, they begin to feel like they don't have to put on a mask around you. And that's exactly where love begins to take root. A younger person probably won't come right out and say, "I love you because you make me feel stable." Instead, they might simply say, "I don't know what it is, but I just feel better when you're near me." But underneath the surface, those words carry the same weight. What they're really saying is that your presence is healing something inside them. Your energy calms their nervous system. Your maturity gives them the emotional scaffolding they never even knew they were missing. And here's the deeper layer of truth behind all of this. Stability is magnetic because, on some primal level, it signals safety and survival. The mind naturally gravitates toward whatever feels secure enough to keep coming back to. A younger person might be accustomed to inconsistency, confusing signals, and constant emotional highs followed by crushing lows. Then they meet you and something shifts. Your presence doesn't rattle them the way others do. Sure, you might still push them to think differently or see things from a new angle, but you never leave them feeling unsteady. Instead, you become the one person capable of quieting the storm inside their heart. And that feeling, that sense of calm, can feel like love long before they even understand what love actually is. Here's the second reason this happens. Your mystery sparks their imagination, and imagination is precisely where obsession takes root. People rarely fall head over heels for something they fully understand. More often, they're captivated by what they can't quite figure out. There's real power in mystery. The unknown pulls people in like gravity. And without even trying, you carry a certain depth that younger people struggle to fully grasp right away. You're not someone who lays everything out on the table. You don't spill every detail the moment you meet someone. You're not desperate to justify or explain yourself. You don't rush to bare your soul. Instead, you let things unfold naturally, layer by layer. And that slow reveal is exactly what makes you impossible to forget. A younger person looks at you and senses that there's more going on beneath the surface than what meets the eye. They pick up on hints of hidden pain, quiet wisdom, inner strength, buried tenderness. They may not know the full story of who you are, but they know there's a story there. And that realization sets their mind in motion. Questions start forming. What shaped you into who you are today? What have you lived through? How can you be both so strong and so gentle at once? Why do you feel simultaneously close and just out of reach? That kind of mystery doesn't just grab attention, it creates a genuine emotional craving. They want to peel back the layers. They want access to the parts of you that aren't handed out freely. And because that curiosity is something they can't quite control, it morphs into desire. Desire deepens into attachment. Attachment stretches into longing. And longing, left unchecked, can spiral into obsession. Let's dig even deeper here. In Jungian psychology, there's a concept that the mind naturally projects meaning onto things it cannot fully possess or understand. In other words, a younger person may not just be seeing you for who you actually are. They might be seeing something far bigger than you, something symbolic. They could be projecting hope, beauty, strength, comfort, even a sense of destiny onto you. Suddenly, you're not just a person to them anymore. You become a symbol of emotional wholeness, of maturity, of the kind of life they secretly wish for, of the person they hope to eventually become. And that, friends, is exactly why they can't seem to stop thinking about you. It's not just your face or the things you say that occupy their mind. They're captivated by the sense of possibility you stir in them. They're replaying the way your silence somehow draws them closer. They're remembering the way you look at them when you're truly listening. They're sensing the invisible pull of your energy, hinting that there's so much more waiting to be discovered if they're brave enough to go deeper. Mystery isn't about manipulation or playing hard to get. It's about genuine depth. It's about being someone with an entire inner world, someone who can't be summed up by first impressions alone. Younger people are naturally drawn to this because they themselves are still in the process of discovering their own depth. They haven't yet learned to appreciate stillness over chaos, substance over surface-level performance, soul over image. So when they encounter someone who naturally radiates depth, they become completely captivated. And let's be honest, many younger hearts have grown weary of things that are predictable and shallow. They're tired of empty attention, hollow compliments, and attraction that fades as quickly as it appears. What they're really searching for is something rare, something that makes them feel truly alive, something that convinces them this person is different from anyone I've known. You become that difference. You become the lingering question they can't stop coming back to. You become the quiet mystery that stays with them long after your conversation has ended. Now here's the third reason this kind of love happens. You awaken a hunger inside them to grow and evolve. Sometimes people fall deeply, madly in love with the person who inspires them to become more than they currently are. This might be one of the most profound reasons love blossoms between someone younger and someone more mature. It isn't just about attraction, it's about transformation. When they're around you, they don't just feel a spark of desire, they feel a sense of possibility. They start to sense that life could hold more depth, more wisdom, more richness and meaning than they had previously imagined. You don't just entertain them or keep them company, you elevate them. A younger person might meet plenty of people who excite them, but very few who genuinely inspire them. You might be one of those rare individuals who makes them stop and reflect on their own life, prompting questions about their future, their habits, their choices, their personal standards, and the emotional direction they're heading in. You become like a mirror, reflecting back not just who they are right now, but who they have the potential to become. That kind of reflection can forge an incredibly powerful emotional connection, because people often fall in love with those who awaken a version of themselves they hadn't yet realized existed. They feel seen, not just for who they are in this moment, but for who they could grow into with the right guidance, the right energy, the right kind of love. You become linked, in their mind, with growth itself. With the very idea of becoming something more. With a higher, richer version of what life can look like. That's precisely why some younger people don't simply admire you from a distance. They idealize you completely. They start to see you as someone who has already weathered storms they're only just beginning to face. Someone who has already absorbed lessons they're still struggling to learn. Someone whose emotional maturity feels like it's operating on a completely different level. They look at you and think, I want to be close to this kind of mind. I want to understand this kind of heart. I want to learn everything you already know. And slowly, quietly, admiration transforms into love. But there's another layer worth mentioning here. Growth isn't always comfortable. It can be painful, humbling, even capable of exposing deep insecurities. So when a younger person falls for someone who represents growth and evolution, they might also feel a bit intimidated by that love. They may start questioning whether they're truly enough. They may carry a quiet fear of rejection, worried they won't measure up to the version of themselves you seem to inspire in them. They may find themselves wondering if they can truly rise to meet what you represent. And here's the thing. This emotional tension, this uncertainty, often deepens the attachment rather than weakening it. The harder something feels to attain, the more meaningful it starts to seem. And the more meaningful it feels, the more their heart refuses to let go. Friends, never underestimate the power of feeling emotionally elevated by someone. A younger person may fall completely for you simply because being around you makes them feel called toward a better version of life. They might not have the words to explain it clearly, but the feeling is unmistakable to them. They sense that you push them to grow up, to think more deeply, to reflect more honestly, to become more self-aware. And in a world overflowing with distractions and noise, someone who helps another person truly wake up is never forgotten. That kind of impact leaves a permanent mark. Now let's examine the deeper pattern running underneath all of this. Very often, a younger person isn't just reacting to your outward appearance, your age, your style, or your charm. They're responding to something much deeper, the inner architecture of who you are. There's something magnetic about the way you've turned pain into wisdom, the way you've transformed loneliness into strength, the way disappointment, instead of breaking you, became grace. That kind of quiet transformation is deeply compelling because it proves that love doesn't have to be fragile or fleeting. It can be dignified, it can be grounded, it can be real and lasting. Younger people are often, whether they realize it or not, searching for emotional truth. Even without fully understanding what they're looking for, they're searching. They want someone whose presence doesn't feel manufactured, someone whose words actually match their energy, someone who doesn't turn love into a performance or a show. And when you're authentic, you become exactly that rare kind of person. You're not pretending to have it all figured out. You're not hiding behind some polished, false image. You're simply being genuine, and genuineness is magnetic in a way that's hard to explain, but impossible to ignore. There's also something incredibly powerful about contrast. A younger person may feel overwhelmed by their own inner chaos, and then they encounter your calm. They may feel consumed by uncertainty, and then witness your quiet confidence. They may recognize their own impulsiveness and find themselves drawn to your self-control. They may crave attention and validation, and then meet someone who doesn't chase it, but naturally commands it anyway. That contrast creates a powerful kind of attraction because it feels like balance, and balance, to the human heart, feels like completion. This is actually one of the oldest truths in psychology. We're often drawn to whatever we believe will fill in what's missing within ourselves. A younger person might look at you and see the steadiness they're searching for, the confidence they haven't yet built, the emotional depth they're still developing, the patience they wish they had, the inner order they deeply admire. Their love becomes a kind of reaching toward wholeness, reaching toward becoming a more complete version of themselves. And once that happens, their feelings can intensify remarkably fast. They may think about you constantly throughout the day. They may replay your words over and over in their mind. They may search for hidden meaning in even your smallest gestures. A simple message might excite them. A brief glance might comfort them. One conversation with you might genuinely change something in them. It's not just that they like you, it's that something deep inside them recognizes you as significant, as important, as someone who matters. But friends, we can't ignore the shadow side of this kind of attraction. When a younger person falls deeply for someone for all these underlying reasons, love can sometimes become complicated and messy. They may idealize you far beyond reality. They may project things onto you that aren't actually true. They may imagine a kind of perfection in you where there's really just ordinary humanity. They may confuse simple admiration with something they believe is destiny. They may convince themselves that the sheer intensity of what they feel proves the relationship is meant to be. But here's an important truth. Intensity alone doesn't guarantee maturity or health. It only reveals the depth of emotion involved, and depth of emotion still needs to be guided by wisdom and clarity. That's exactly why self-awareness becomes so essential in these situations. If someone younger finds themselves drawn to you, it's worth asking some honest questions. Do they love who you actually are? Or do they love the reflection they've created of you in their mind? Are they in love with the real person standing in front of them, or with the meaning they've projected onto you? Do they love your genuine presence, or the promise and possibility they imagine that presence represents? These aren't small, insignificant questions. They're the very questions that determine whether love grows into something healthy and real, or spirals into pure fantasy and illusion. And yet, even with all this complexity woven throughout, there's still something profoundly beautiful happening here. Something deeply, unmistakably human. Because at its very core, love is often simply the meeting point between longing and recognition. A younger person may look at you and, in that single moment, feel truly seen, gently challenged, deeply comforted, and genuinely inspired, all at the same time. That's not nothing. That's powerful. That alone is enough to move someone's heart. That alone is enough to change the entire direction of a life. Sometimes we assume that love has to begin with perfect compatibility or flawless timing. But the truth is, many of the deepest connections actually begin with something far simpler: recognition. That sudden, unexplainable feeling that somehow this particular person matters. That quiet sense that your soul noticed them before your mind could ever fully explain why. That's precisely what unfolds when a younger person crosses paths with someone who embodies emotional maturity, mystery, and inner calm, all wrapped into one presence. They don't simply admire you from afar, they feel pulled toward an entire world they suddenly want to step into. And here's a truth many people hesitate to say out loud. Energy that comes from age and life experience often feels safer because it has already learned firsthand what chaos actually costs. It has already paid the price that comes with chasing illusions. It has already walked through disappointment and emerged on the other side, wiser for it. To a younger soul, that kind of grounded energy feels like a lighthouse cutting through fog. It quietly says, "You don't have to drift aimlessly forever. There's direction here. There's something solid to hold on to." And people are naturally drawn toward direction when they've grown exhausted by confusion and uncertainty. But this attraction isn't only about safety. It's also about vitality. A younger person is still brimming with desire, hope, and forward momentum. When that raw, youthful energy collides with your depth, something almost electric happens. You aren't dulled or diminished by age. You aren't emptied out by everything you've experienced. Instead, you've become alive in a quieter, more profound way. Your eyes hold stories untold. Your voice carries real meaning behind it. Even your silence carries weight and presence. That rare combination, being both deeply alive and deeply grounded, can be absolutely irresistible. So when someone younger falls head over heels for you because of these three underlying reasons, understand clearly, this isn't shallow or superficial. It isn't simply about physical attraction. It's rooted in emotional safety, captivating mystery, and the promise of personal growth. It's the comforting feeling of home, combined with a hunger for the unknown, combined with a genuine desire to evolve into someone greater than they currently are. When these three forces intertwine, they can create a love that feels overwhelming, undeniable, and impossible to forget. So what should you actually do with this understanding? First and foremost, don't let your ego inflate too quickly. Being admired isn't the same thing as being truly understood. Being desired isn't automatically the same as being loved wisely and maturely. Second, don't brush the connection aside as meaningless or insignificant. Sometimes the heart senses truths that the mind hasn't fully processed or organized yet. Third, stay grounded in honesty above everything else. If the connection is genuine and real, let it be built on a foundation of truth. But if it's mostly projection and fantasy, resist the urge to feed that illusion further. Real, lasting love has to be able to withstand reality, not just intensity of feeling.
A younger person who has fallen deeply in love with you might be standing right at the threshold of their own personal transformation. Your presence has stirred something within them. Your energy has awakened parts of them that were previously dormant. Your humanity, flaws and all, has challenged them to grow. And perhaps without ever meaning to, you've become an important chapter in their inner journey and development. That's actually a significant responsibility to carry, because when one soul views another as a catalyst for awakening, that connection has the power to shape both of their lives moving forward, not just one. Friends, this is exactly why certain people never fade from our memory. They don't arrive with fireworks or dramatic entrances. They arrive as quiet turning points. They stir something inside us that we didn't even realize was sleeping there all along. They become forever linked to a new, deeper understanding of who we are. And often, it's the younger person who falls the hardest and deepest, because youth still burns with raw possibility and hasn't yet learned to mask its true desires behind practiced indifference or emotional guardedness. So if you find that a younger person is madly in love with you, don't fixate only on the age gap between you. Look instead at the emotional truth underneath it all. Consider the stability you might be offering them. Consider the mystery you naturally carry. Consider the growth you may be quietly awakening inside them. These aren't small, trivial things. These are exactly the forces capable of moving the human soul in profound ways. And hold on to this final thought. People rarely stay in love with the surface-level details of your life for very long. What truly captivates them is the depth of who you are underneath it all. They fall for the peace you bring into their world, the meaningful questions you inspire them to ask, the personal growth you quietly demand of them, and the undeniable feeling that life simply isn't shallow anymore when you're around. That's the real reason a younger person may find themselves madly in love with you. Not because you're easy to figure out, not because you're simple or uncomplicated, but because you represent the kind of presence that makes their heart feel, perhaps for the very first time, that love might actually be something far deeper than mere desire. Friends, love was never truly about age to begin with. It's about resonance, about what one soul manages to awaken inside another. And when a younger heart becomes captivated by someone older, wiser, calmer, and deeper, the resulting feeling can be completely overwhelming. It can feel like destiny unfolding. It can feel like aching, beautiful longing. It can feel like the beginning of something sacred and rare. But at its deepest core, it's often simply the soul recognizing exactly what it needs in order to grow and evolve further. And that, in the language of psychology, in the language of human desire, in the language of the heart itself, explains why someone younger might fall madly in love with you for these three fundamental reasons. You make them feel emotionally safe, you make them endlessly curious, and you make them feel like they have the potential to become so much more than who they are today. That isn't ordinary, everyday love. That's the rare kind of love capable of changing a person forever.